Alright, well I guess I'll start by showing you the completed version of this program that I first started working on in the previous video. So basically we have this grid, and each of these has label controls like we started adding in the previous video. And it's really just kind of a memory game. Right, you can see what it's kind of doing. Where the fuck is that? There we go. Now I forgot. Yeah. Ambulance. Okay, so that's pretty much what it does, and then it closes itself right afterwards. Okay, so basically, to break this thing down, to get sound in it, I had to include that path, by the way. But basically, okay, we have a random object, kind of like the previous program, the little fucking math quiz program. Okay, and this, then we create a list object in here that they're going to use in here, and we're setting it to these 16, characters here, basically, because it's a, string object. I don't know if they have the character object in here or not. I think they do. Because this could have just as readily been a character object, but anyway, string object was probably easier to convert to into like labels and stuff, I guess. I don't know, but I'm not gonna try to second guess why they did some of this stuff. But anyway, they're populating the list object with these 16 characters. Then they've got two variables, which are basically reference variables. So in other words, they're a type label, okay, but they're null. It's set to null at first. So they're not pointing to any object, but these are kind of like pointers in C++. So the only difference is I think they're safe pointers, meaning that you can't really go directly manipulate memory with them or anything, because they're not actual pointers, but they're kind of like a pointer in the fact that you can point them at any object. So any object that they're a type of, anyway. So like this can be pointed at any label control that you have on a form. So in a sense, and since you can change them dynamically, again, they're like pointers, really. But again, probably a safe pointer. I'd imagine that that you can't really do much harm with them, like going and rewriting blocks of memory or whatever. Okay, and if you think about it, that's principally a large part of what you do in C++ with pointers anyway, is actually pointing at objects that you have like on the heap or whatever. So it kind of makes sense to have a safe pointer that is just dealt with like that. So if that indeed is what it is, but that's just my guess. I haven't done any research on it. Now here I declare, some sound variables. I should have made this as an array or something, but or even maybe a list. Who knows? But anyway, I just said, oh, for shits and giggles, I'll just do it this way. I mean, what the hell? Just to not deal with it on that level yet. Anyway, then we come in here to the constructor. Okay, and it's running this routine down here in that, and we'll get to that in a second. And here I set up my sound player you know, with some sound files I have on the system in a particular location. So I initialize these 4 variables to those 4 sounds, 4 WAV files, because that's apparently only works with WAV files. You know, then we get down here. Now these, you know, blocks of code I more or less copied and pasted out of their you know, their little tutor. Which that's not actually it, what I just showed you, but anyway, their tutor, the Microsoft's tutor on this particular topic. And I'll talk about these in a second. But you know, because I got notes on it down below. Assign icons to squares. So this is, you know, basically what, you know, goes in and takes our, you know, label controls here, you know, which are contained by that wherever it is. Shit. That's not components. It's, oh yeah, right here, this table layout panel container. So anyway, but it's doing a for each statement, you know, kind of like the math quiz program did, you know, for each control, and that you know, control, that container control, you know, it's trying to cast it as a label type object, and if it is a label object, it'll execute this code here, which is, you know, looking for a random number. Okay, and it's going icons.count. So that's, you know, it's going to generate a random number using the next method. You know, that's the size of the number of icons, which in this case is 16 to start with. Okay, then it goes, you know, label1.text, you know, equals icons random number. So, you know, so basically it's gonna, you know, find an icon randomly in that list, because that list still works like more or less like an array, and it's setting the text property of a given label, you know, and again, there's no telling exactly what order, you know, for this for each statement that it's going to select the labels, just so it's going to go through all of them one at a time. So, you know, for any given label, it'll set its icon to a random number out of that list. So, you know, remember it's a string type object, so it's directly applicable to text. The text property of the label control that may be, you know, selected at any given time by this routine here. And we're setting its fore color to its back color, so it makes it invisible at first, you know, because remember, this part of the initialization routine, it's, you know, called in the constructor up here, so it'll just run this once. Although we could technically run this again, you know, if you wanted to play a second round of the game, you notice that the game, when it was done, it just closed the form, but, you know, but you could, you know, this could be part of the initialization routine, although you'd have to go and, you know, set these to null too, to begin with, ostensibly, to actually reset the game and play another round. But, let's see, where the hell was I? Yeah, assign to squares, okay. But, you know, it does that, but then it goes in and removes the item on the list, and this is why the list would have to be repopulated too if you wanted to play a second round, you know, which is done here. So, you know, you'd have to go in and, like, you know, do this all over again, although you might not have to reinstantiate it, but you'd certainly have to repopulate the list again if you wanted to play a second round without just restarting it like I could have done. You know, but so basically as it goes through and assigns these icons, you know, the list gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So every time it makes a pass through this, at first there's 16 icons, then there's 15, then there's 14, then there's 13, and we got 16 squares. So eventually it gets down to nothing, you know, but as it assigns one, it eliminates it basically out of the list, so that it makes sure that, you know, when it when it assigns all the icons, it will have exactly this many. So that way we're assured of having 2 of each one. So there's a path to victory there. So basically it goes through that, and then it comes down here, and well, that's pretty much the end of the routine. So that basically sets up the grid. Hold on. I like to put spaces between things like that. Okay, now here we're going to talk about this before we get into this label click event, which is universal. This label click event, it's set up kind of like those answer boxes were in the math quiz program, where it's, this applies to all 16 labels. So, in all 16 labels we do have that same click event applied. So but however, now I was noticing, it's like, what the hell is all this fucking code here? What are these? It looks like XAML or something, but in fact it's actually XML code. Now if I hover my cursor over that, you'll see this every label's click event is handled. You can see this text right here. Well, that's this text right here. Okay, and you can see this text right here is this text right here, and guess that really doesn't do anything, but this I guess is making reference to that, but there's really nothing there. But anyway, this is for IntelliSense, so it'll give you this direct feedback from this code. So that's what all that junk is. So that was interesting. I thought those were like preprocessor directives or something, but you create that by typing 3 slashes. So if you do it 2, they're green, and 3, they're gray. So that's an IntelliSense XAML or XML code. So I thought that was interesting. But XML is for like display structuring and so forth. So I guess it makes sense that that would be involved in IntelliSense in this case. But anyway, here's that click event. So we basically, if you're the first pass, this reads linearly. This routine here. So if you're basically, you haven't clicked anything yet, okay, it just enables the timer and returns. If the timer is enabled, it returns. But in this case, since you hadn't clicked anything, the timer will not be enabled yet. So it'll come down and basically, establish this as being a variant of that object. Okay, and it's looking for label controls basically, from a click event. What this is, I just consider this a filter. So, what you're doing here is you're really just filtering it out, because we had an object sender. Okay, well, an object could have been any kind of, text box or a button or anything that might have been passed in here, but this is trying to, in this statement here, filter out the given object. So it's, trying to say, hey, if there are any, this control that was calling this routine was a label control, set it as a label control, set our variable as a label control, and it's basically trying to cast sender as a, as a label control. Okay, but then it's checking to see if that was successful, and if it is, okay, then our filter, is good. So basically, it'll execute this code. If it wasn't good, though, it won't execute this code. So, but again, if it was a label control, then it'll execute the code in here. So, it's set in the 4-color black, or it's saying if the 4-color is black, return. So that means, if you've already selected one, okay, exit out. There's nothing else to do. So it's waiting for you to, select a second label before it actually does anything. Anyway, then it's coming down here and saying, okay, so this is really, right here, this is really just returning, just like it says here, it's, so if you click a label, it's already black, don't do anything, return. Okay, so, but if you click a label, if there's one already black, and you're clicking one that isn't black, then it'll come through and get this far and run this part of the code, which is, checking to see if first clicked, our little reference variable up there, our first reference variable is null. Okay. If it is null, that would be strange. Maybe, but maybe not. Okay, actually, it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be strange if the first label, if everything was blank, for example, then that wouldn't be so strange. So, because your first click, actually would be null. It's not being set yet, so it'll actually go set it if there's nothing selected in this particular situation. So, then it sets first clicked equal to your label. So it's assigning a control basically to this object pointer here. And it's going first click for color equals color.black. Okay, so it's setting the color, and it could have just as easily done that with this variable instead, because they're both the same object at this point in time. And it's playing a sound and returning. Okay. So the second time you come through here, like I said, first click isn't null anymore, so it'll pass over this code and go in here and set second click equal to a label, because if it got this far, it's got to be that you clicked a second label. Okay, so it sets it there and then goes, second click equal dot for color equals color dot black. Okay, so it makes sure it's visible. Okay, and then it goes and executes this code. So, which is basically testing to see if the two, second click dot text is equal to first click dot text. So it's seeing if they match or not. And then it resets this, because again, regardless of whether they match or not, these have got to be reset. And then it plays the sound, then it's checking for winner. Okay, which we'll get to that routine in a second. But basically, irregardless of the result, it'll return if it's in here. So, however, if they didn't match, then it'll come down and start the timer. Okay, and the timer will basically reset make the two labels that were selected go invisible again, and reset everything. But basically, we come down here, check for winner. Okay, so it's going for each. Now I changed this code. This was the original part, and I just wanted to say, okay, well, I wonder if you could just be more specific with your filter instead of looking for controls. Just look for labels, and yeah, it works. In fact, I didn't even need this statement here, because I could have just used, instead of this icon label, I could have used this control down here, and then in fact we wouldn't even have to do an if statement if we did that, as long as we're sure that there are label controls on the on our form, which in this case we are. So I mean, really all this could have been eliminated, but I just wanted to see at least if you could do it to this level. So, but at any rate, this checks to see if checks to see if the fore color equals the back color, and then it returns if it's not null. Let's see. So basically this means the user 1 down here, and it plays a sound. It shows a little box basically, and then closes itself. So if there's a winner, okay, which would come back to our check for winner thing, which really just returns irregardless. So oh, well, it actually won't return because it'll actually just close the application. So if you're a winner, yeah, once you click that dialog box, it'll close the application, and that'll be the end of it. So I don't know what I was looking at when I saw return, but anyway, got this timer one click event here. So again, if they selected the wrong icon on their second pick, well, this timer was started, in the code up above, and basically it goes and turns the icons invisible after stopping the timer, after stopping itself, and then first click equals null, second click equals null, so it's resetting our two reference variables. So basically it's hidden everything and kind of reset it, so because you chose the wrong icons. And then here's our form load event where I went ahead and put our sound play in it. So it plays the introductory sound. So anyway, that's basically, I should have just scrolled through this damn thing, just let you read the notes that explains everything. But anyway, this probably just made it more confusing overall.